Nice music.
Yes, it's nightclub music to start the whole thing. It's very relaxing. Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to anybody who we're just waiting for as many participants to join as possible before we start this session. So, on behalf of MBB Indonesia, great welcome to you. Stay online until we get as many participants going as possible. We'll then our formal discussions. But it won't be that formal. This is a virtual discussion today, which we hope to exchange ideas, get good ideas, brainstorm, and find out what Indonesia needs in terms of green transition. One of the questions that have come through to me already are saying, what is the Green Deal? But that will be answered, of course, by the ambassador and Henriette. What is the green transition? Answered as we go forward. There'll be quite a lot of the questions you've already asked, quite easily answered. What does Indonesia need? That will be addressed by Minister Rizal, who will be talking to us about APNAS's plans and openness for cooperation. Miranda, tell us when you think we'll be ready. Okay. So let us dive in. Welcome. On behalf of MBB Indonesia, it's a great pleasure.
Stop the music, please.
On screen, you'll see our distinguished speakers and presenters. I'm going to ask them all to mute until it's their turn to speak. And we will be starting our discussion now. It's going to be a virtual discussion. It's going to be something which is of great importance, we believe, to Indonesia. Why is that? Let me just give you a quick bit of background. The EU has come together in this idea of having a European Green Deal. And there's some key phrases that I came across that really made it very important for us to have this. The EU is a global leader. Part of the presentation which the EU has made to the world says that as it currently stands, it's clear the level of global ambition is insufficient to change the way in which the world is working at the moment. So the EU wants to engage more intensively with all partners to increase the collective effort. So the EU is taking the initiative, but it wants to engage with its partners. Why is that? Well, we've discovered pretty well that no country is an island by itself. No matter how much good the EU does, without the rest of the world joining in, without having intercontinental agreements, inter-country agreements to try and get the playing field as level as possible, it doesn't matter what the EU does by itself, even though it is incredibly important. The EU says it's going to continue to engage with the economies of the G20, and here we are in Indonesia, one of the G20 economies, and trying to find the different needs and contexts in each country. So that's a great idea for a discussion. What are the needs in Indonesia that the EU can satisfy? 27 different countries with research and experience helping one country with its research experience and implementation. So it's a really marvelous subject to explore. And what we're going to do this afternoon is very quickly look at the big picture as presented by the EU ambassador, His Excellency Vincent Pickett, who's going to tell us what they've set out to do. We're going to follow on then with a look at what Indonesia is doing already and how it can benefit from the things that the EU are doing to make 1 + 1 = 4 or 5. Then we're going to look at a bit more about the implementation that the EU wants to do through Henriette Vejerman. And then we're going to move on to the private sector through circular economy, the Indonesia's needs for a new energy paradigm, and finally we end up with green finance. So it's a really, really strong program, which we want to have as flexible, but as smart and as quick as possible. No one wants to sit for hours listening to speakers, including me. So I'd like to move on as quickly as possible and introduce His Excellency, Mr. Vincent Pichet, who's going to give us the big picture. What has Europe said to itself and therefore to the world? Over to you, Your Excellency.
Thanks very much indeed, Alastair, for the introduction and for the invitation to myself and also to my colleague Henriette Vergeman to speak this afternoon. Henriette will talk a little bit later in the program with some more detail about what the EU is rolling out on the European continent right now. But I'll just kick off with a very short introduction, I hope, staying within the 10 minutes that were set for me about the overall picture for the EU. And of course, today is a very timely and good seminar, and we are very keen on promoting this general and public debate in Indonesia and between Indonesians and us on this topic, on the green transition. It is a fact that the EU and Indonesia have already built a very strong cooperation over many years so far on the climate, on sustainable energy, on smart green cities, on the forest and forest governance, and also on ocean governance. And that is both policy cooperation as well as very practical cooperation with operational finance from the EU side. Now we are ready to expand what we have done so far to building a veritable green agenda between Indonesia and us, and so as to guide us in how we can cooperate towards the common green goals. Now, our common green agenda can evidently include more green investment, trade, cooperation on renewable energy and the energy transition, circular economy, and with the ultimate goal of moving jointly, as we hope, towards climate neutrality. The context is, of course, difficult. COVID, the COVID crisis, which is hitting us all, is affecting our economies and our societies. But we feel that it is even more important now, in the time of this crisis, to have something of a common theme, a common thread and pointer to where we wish to go with our recovery. The timing for expanding our cooperation is especially important now because we want to help ensure that Indonesia, like us, recovers quickly from the COVID crisis, and we are very keen to combine this recovery effort with a move towards the green economy. In Europe, we see the post-COVID recovery very much in the light of the green agenda. Last year, a little bit more than last year, in December 2019, right before the COVID crisis, the European Union adopted this policy of the Green Deal. You've mentioned it already, for the European continent. It is a growth strategy, an economic growth strategy, to overcome at the same time the challenges of climate change, environmental degradation, and the aim is to transform the European Union into a modern, sustainable, resource efficient and competitive economy in which, one, there are no net emissions of greenhouse gases by 2050. Secondly, the economic growth that we will have should be decoupled from the growth in resource use. And thirdly, and that is very important as well, in all this endeavor, no person, no place, no member state should be left behind. So it's a motto of solidarity, concrete solidarity, that forms also a leading theme for what we intend to do. The European Green Deal provides a roadmap with actions that will boost the efficiency of the use of resources by moving towards a clean and circular economy. It aims to restore biodiversity on the European continent, and it aims to cut pollution of all sorts. Now, it's being rolled out right now. Ever since 2019, we have been working on that. Partly it's been a political process, of course, of decision-making amongst the member states in the EU Council of Ministers, heavy involvement by the European Parliament as well, and of course, a tremendous involvement and engagement by the civil society. Also in legislative terms, we are moving ahead with a very, very extensive legislative program in the areas of energy, transport, agriculture, forestry, research, and financial services. The Europe's Green Recovery Plan post-COVID integrates all these notions. In fact, we intend to put even more emphasis on them as we recover from the pandemic and to emerge from the pandemic stronger and greener than we were. This is not just politics and policy, it's also money. A tremendous amount of budget has been decided for our green recovery late last year. 1.8 trillion euros for 7 years, the largest budget layout that the EU has ever seen in its history. That is for the European continent, but there's also a large budget made available for the cooperation with partners outside the EU. We have a new cooperation program with a budget of 18 billion euros worldwide. No precise determination as yet how much of this money could come to Indonesia. The principal beneficiary of the money will be the least and lesser developed economies, naturally, but we will be discussing with Bappenas, with the other ministries over the next couple of months how we can cooperate. And essentially, of course, here we're in the hands not just of what sort of money we have available on the EU side, but also on what sort of ideas, what sort of plans, common objectives we can formulate for this cooperation. I should mention also loan finance from the European Investment Bank to the amount of 300 million euros per year. Now, over our 7-year budget framework, that is 2 trillion euros available for Indonesia alone. So a massive opportunity we will have there. Let me also underline that this is not just the EU institutions represented by myself, but also the EU member states who are totally committed to this, and some of whom are making available grant finance to Indonesia, and as well as loan finance, and particularly as regards to loans, Germany and France are most prominent. Now, in all these areas, we also know that there's a tremendous interest from EU companies in being actively involved. Companies that are in Indonesia right now. We have a good 1,100 European firms across all sectors in Indonesia, but no doubt also companies who are still in Europe and are waiting for the right opportunity, the right investment climate and the right plans to come and invest in Indonesia. So the private sector will have a role to play from the European Union side. And that is also good for Indonesia's in growth and growth objective. We know from Europe that the green sector provides more jobs than the conventional sector, that it makes money, it generates GDP, and we see it as an engine whereby both for Europe, but also I think very much for Indonesia, we can speed up the green transition. The notion that we often hear about is the notion of building back better, and what better way to do that is then through partnership between Indonesia and us, as well as other partners. We've had, as I mentioned already, many constructive discussions, and we look forward to moving forward and agreeing a green EU-Indonesia partnership, along with additional funding that can support the implementation of that program. So to come back to the title of your seminar, can the EU help? Yes, the EU can and will help. But in fact, if I may make one sort of modification or nuance to it, I would say rather than help, it's a partnership. We are equal partners in this endeavor, coming from different starting points and with different economic and social backgrounds, but it is an equal partnership. So that's how we will approach that, with commitments by both sides and with contributions by both sides. Now, how can the EU help and be a partner? I think first of all by proving on our own continent that this whole notion of a green growth agenda, a social growth agenda, that it works and that it can perform both in terms of the socio-economic development and in terms of the climate objectives. So that is one thing. And the other thing is that we, of course, we need clarity and ideas and ambition from the Indonesian side. I'm thereby not saying that there is no ambition, but we are here at the moment, in this year in particular, at a turning point, a tipping point, some say, for the climate ambition globally. And all countries that are part of the multilateral climate negotiation framework will have to reflect very, very hard what more they can bring to the table when the climate negotiations resume in Glasgow at the end of this year. So we do look forward towards Indonesian plans for raising its ambitions for the climate talks. The EU has already done so. We have raised our ambition for the year 2030 from 40% cuts in CO2 to 55% cuts in CO2, and that is compared to the year 1990. So pretty ambitious there, but this has been decided and this has been cast in law. So it is binding upon the EU and the member states to deliver. And we thus hope that also partners from elsewhere in the world will do something similar. The EU has made climate neutrality our goal by 2050. Several other countries, including in Asia, have done exactly the same. Japan, South Korea, China by the year 2060. And okay, maybe this is not yet an option for Indonesia right now, but let's reflect on it. Let's discuss it. Let's see how this can work and see how far we get. Because at the end of the day, we need this broad global partnership to realizing the sort of greenhouse warming measures that the world needs. We are keen to hear from Indonesia on this, also in the reassurance that a green growth now will help the country realize its SDGs by the year 2030, and will help the country also realize the growth objective that the president has set for Indonesia but for the year 2045. And we know from Europe that growth, social transformation, and cleaning our environment are things that can go hand in hand. In fact, we have found they can be mutually reinforcing.
Thank you, Ambassador.
I stop there.
We are just keeping out to our timing, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. Thank you. I had finished, as a matter of fact, so I was about to close by saying that my colleague Henriette will be saying more about the Green Deal. But let me close by saying that we look forward tremendously to our partnership with Indonesia in the interests of both countries on their own, but certainly also in the interest of the global climate agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed to His Excellency, the EU Ambassador. And amazing how good our timing is, because in today's newspapers, the President of Indonesia very kindly gave us an introduction, front page of the Jakarta Post today, saying President Jokowi called for stronger global commitments to tackle climate change. So pretty good timing. We organized him to say that yesterday. I don't think we did, but it was very good timing. And of course, what you've said is absolutely correct. This is a partnership. Everything that you're doing forms a good framework for people to join in wherever they may be. And I'm sure that as we have understood from previous experience, if we don't have a full world partnership, one party can bring a lot of damage to the rest of the world. Now we have Pak Rizal, who is going to take up the discussion on behalf of Indonesia. Bappenas have been given that role of the planning agency for Indonesia, but also they were given the sustainability portfolio. And so it's a very good combination. And Engineer Josafat Rizal Primana is the Deputy for Facilities and Infrastructure of the Ministry of National Development and Planning. And under him, perfectly position is water and irrigation, transport, energy, telecoms, informatics, public-private partnerships, which are perfect for this discussion, engineering, and urban housing and settlements. Now, I know you can't go into all of those in 15 minutes or however long we've given you, Pak Rizal, but what we're trying to establish is, what does Indonesia need from this partnership? What can it get? What experiences have you had in the past, and what can you feed into this system? This system, which we've now heard comprises of a potential part of 18 billion euro and a potential part of 2 trillion euro from the investment bank for things that you may need to make Indonesia move into this new green transition. So over to you, Pak Rizal. Please tell us what Bappenas are doing and how they think that the partnership with the EU can work. Thank you very much indeed for being here.
Thank you, Pak Alistair. Should I speak in Bahasa Indonesia or speak in Bahasa?
Well, I think most people are expecting English, but if you have to explain something in Indonesian, please do it. I'm sure there's lots of people out there who are bahasa juga.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Pak Alistair, and thank you, Excellency, Pak Vincent Piquet, for the good explanation about the willingness EU to develop a cooperation with Indonesia. And it seems like, as Pak Alistair Spears said earlier, that it is really in line with the government of Indonesia would like to have for the next 5, 10, or as you said also, Pak Vincent, to 2045. Then it is a big transformation, if I can say that the Bappenas, through the Minister of National Development Planning, also announced the plan for the next year ahead that we're going to have a transformation, economic transformation, and especially with the problem of COVID that we're having now, it seems like the possible way to tackle the problem is how can we make some sort of a balance between the health, how can we tackle the health problem as well as we still maintain the economic growth in the good pace. So I think that the balance, the ministers always say that's like a juice swing, the juice swing that there have to be two wings to flap to in order to make that goose can fly. So I think that's the symbolism that ministers always said, and we would like to have the first recovery of the economic as soon as possible, and then the other things that we also would like in the long term. The long term is the transformation, economic transformation through the most important thing, as also Excellency said earlier, the green economy. We believe that the green economy will create a big growth, a big opportunity for Indonesia, as we also that it's going to be bigger and bigger in the country, and we still have a room for that. And I think the opportunity itself should be should be tapped by the Indonesian government to able to maintain their growth in the future. So the related sectors that is really effective on the green economy, as Excellency said earlier, there will be energy, transportation, agriculture, and forestry. And in my case, then it will be transportation and energy will play a dominant role on the green transformation. Firstly, that we're going to have renewable energy built and also energy efficiency. And for the transportation itself, we're going to introduce more and more cities to be able to provide urban transportation. We're still working on 6 major cities now that are going to be a good opportunity for us to make a cooperation with the EU on providing urban transportation before next level to the electric vehicle and the things that related to the transportations that can be provide clean economy or clean energy and clean economy. And in the field of energy, we've been targeting that we're going to increase our renewable in the future. As you probably noticed in many publications and also many newspaper and news, the government is would like to increase the portion of renewable energy 23% 2025 and increase to 30% to 2050. So I think that's not really ambitious target, but it is still something that we have to achieve because we know that the challenges is not few in that area. So I think the most importantly that we still have a problem on how can we preparing our new projects. We have experience with the European Investment Bank 3 years ago that the European Investment Bank would like to put their money on the private sector here to build the renewable energy, but we are not easily receive that loan because of the project preparation still have a problem here, and also the institution, we are not ready for receive that money directly from foreign loan to private sector. So there has to be some sort of a institution that can be channeling that money. We have SMI here, Sarana Multi Infrastructure, that you may understand that is the government of Indonesia financial institution that can channeling the money, but still there's a lot of obstacles on doing that in terms of regulation. So I think there's a lot of homework in our side that we're going to, smoothing out, and we're pretty happy that the ambassador knows that good news that 1.8 trillion euro worldwide for the next 7 years. The money is the biggest in the history. So I think Indonesia should also can tap that money to cooperate in many areas. And the most important thing for us is how can we have an assistance on the preparing on how can we tapping that money. So I think we're still lagging behind on how can we prepare the project pipeline, and especially for the green project like green transportation, green energy, and also green manufacturing industry. And apart from that, as also Excellency mentioned in his presentation, that the financial institution is still a problem in the country. So I think how can we try to have the suitable financial institution to channeling the money is also most important for us to be, smoothing out. So I think that's the area that we're going to have on the cooperation, and it is in line with the ambassador said that we move to the more green economy, circular economy, and also part of that, especially on the forestry, that we still dealing with that, and especially the deputy for the natural resources dealing with these issues. And I will inform the deputy about this opportunity, and also the agriculture itself, agriculture under the deputy of the natural resources. So I think from my side, then it will be transportation, energy, and irrigation for the supporting the agriculture. For the modern agriculture will be a major issue on the cooperation. I think I have to stop my presentation up to now, Alistair, since we have the same, spirit with the ambassador, and we're just talking on the detail on that, and much more easier for us if we have same spirit and the same way to be able to move on the green economy in the future. So thank you that you're still willing to have us in Indonesia, and again that we still have a homework. We're going to repair our homework. We working on in our homework, and I hope that it will be soon we can materialize our cooperation. Thank you, Alistair.
Thank you very much indeed, Deputy Minister Rizal. What you've just done is exactly what we wanted, an open and frank discussion on what is needed between two parties. We're not talking detail here today. We're going to get a little bit more detail from our experts, John Raspati and Sano, who are going to talk a little bit more about the things that the private sector see. But from an institutional point of view, that was really exactly what we needed. You've already outlined an area which I can see the ambassador nodding, saying, look, if it's willing lender, willing borrower, but the institutions aren't right, the channels aren't right, we've already got a potential area of cooperation started right there. It requires this honesty and this clarity to be able to do it, which is great. Before we have our first question and answer session, I'd like to, first of all, welcome all of the people who are on YouTube. We have another 200 people watching YouTube live at the moment. So there's about 300 people online. That shows how interested people are in this subject. How can Indonesia make a green transition? It's not for the government. It's not for the companies, it's not for the institutions, it's for the people. And that's one of the things that we see. People will make the transition if we show them what to do, lead them, help them, and guide them. Presentation materials are kind of not important at the moment. That's not something which we're interested in. We're talking about spirit, as Rizal just said. What's the spirit of cooperation? We're going to go into a little bit more detail now with Henriette Feijman, who's the first counsel of the European Union delegation. And she is in the area of environment, climate action, digital cooperation. And she's got a lot of experience in this, having done a very similar role in India and brought about some good changes in India in the areas of environment, mobility, urbanization, smart cities, climate change, and brought some partnerships to bear there. So she obviously knows how to bring partnerships into being. So that's, having spoken to her a little bit in the past, she's very interested in getting down more to the nitty gritty. How can we do it? It's great to have the promises and the delights of political agreements. What exactly are we going to do? Look, she's worked in Brussels, so she knows her way around there, the Environment Commission, and of course, coming from Copenhagen, which has quite often been called the most sustainable city in Europe, we've got an expert to listen to now who's going to give us a little bit more detail about the EU's plans. Henriette, can I pass over to you for your presentation? After that, we're going to have a first question and answer session so that we get the sort of policy bit out of the road before we get into the private sector. Thank you very much indeed. Over to you, Henriette.
Thank you very much, Alistair. And thank you very much for organizing this seminar with us and for giving us this opportunity to have a really, as you say, a frank and open conversation about how this green partnership between the European Union and Indonesia could look. So as was mentioned already by the ambassador, we've had already talks with different parts of the government, with different stakeholders. So we have some ideas on how this green partnership can look. We have our own ideas, of course, which is very much based on the Green Deal and the policy work that is happening in Europe, as the ambassador was also mentioning. So we are really right now trying to see, you know, how can we find the cross section between what it is that Indonesia needs and desires and what it is that we can offer and to create a true spirit of partnership. So maybe I can just, given that you so kindly talked about my past in India and elsewhere, maybe I can just say a few words about how these partnerships have worked in other places. So the idea is really, as I say, to try to bring everybody, not everybody, but bring all the relevant partners into a kind of a coherent partnership. So, you know, very often we have policy dialogues with countries that are very, very useful for, you know, understanding each other's policy and for inspiring each other and so on and so on. So this would be one part of this partnership that we are planning. Another part, of course, we have had, as the ambassador mentioned, we've had over the recent years or many past years, we've had a lot of projects, technical assistance, very good pilot projects. We've got financing from the European Investment Bank. So we've got all these different components, but what we are trying now is really to see them much more coherently, and not only what is coming directly from the EU and its institutions, but also bringing on board our member states, because of course, Germany, Denmark, Sweden, Netherlands, many of our member states, Poland, many of them have good cooperation here, have good technical solutions, good business solutions, and all of them are somehow, you know, in one way or the other relevant for for Indonesia in this process of a green transition. So the idea is really to, bring all the European stakeholders, be it governmental, private sector, etc., into the picture, and to make their solutions, their opportunities available for Indonesia. So, as I say, we've had talks in the past. So this is really how the partnerships are going to work, and then what will be inside the partnership is, as the ambassador mentioned, very closely linked to the European Union Green Deal. So the Green Deal is our kind of transformative piece of policy that really tries to overhaul our entire economy and turn it into a green economy. And of course, all our kind of global commitments, so the Paris Agreement, our NDCs, everything that we are doing on climate action, circular economy, as you mentioned, but also really zero pollution, creating toxic-free environment, preserving the biodiversity and ecosystems. We have a component of the Green Deal that is called the farm to fork. So ensuring that our food production is being done in as little harm to the environment as possible. So what we are trying to do is really to bring all of this into this kind of a green partnership. So we would be doing activities that are related to, as the ambassador was mentioning, trying to support Indonesia to also be in a position to work towards climate neutrality at some point in the future. So which means stepping up the current ambition on the nationally determined contributions here in the same way as we've seen other parts of the world. We hope that this will be possible, and from what we've heard from the government so far, this is indeed something that the government is willing to, of course, provided that there is the right kind of collaboration and support from the global community. So this kind of support that we think that we can provide is related to a clean energy transformation, exactly also what we heard from Bapenas, to look into how can we have much more focus on renewable energy. We know that this is a policy of the government, and where there's a huge need and ambition for discussing also with global partners. Energy efficiency, making sure that Indonesia's particular situation in terms of all the many small islands gives an increased challenge on renewable energy. So this is something that we are very, very keen to work on. Circular economy for us is the real basis of the economy. It means, as you probably know, and as the word says, that we really, instead of having a linear economy where we just put resources into one end and take them out in the other end, we make sure that these resources are kept in the economy at the highest possible value. So this is, of course, related to waste management, but it's also related to products. It's related to how we design our products, how we make sure that we can use them as long as possible and recycle them, reuse them when they're no longer useful, how we eliminate as much as possible toxic materials inside the products, so that all in all, we make sure that these products are as little as possible harmful to the environment. Then another important issue where we have, as the European Union, also our member states have been working in the past, is of course related to the sustainable forest management and everything that has to do with fighting deforestation. This is a very big priority also for the European Union in the future. And it's something that we hope that we can also build into this green partnership with Indonesia. And then, as I mentioned, all the issues related to biodiversity. This year is a very important year as the Biodiversity Cup is coming up in China later in the year, and we hope in the same way that this partnership can help support Indonesia in its implementation of the Paris Agreement on climate action. We hope that it could also be able to support all the commitments that are made in the global context or in the multilateral context on biodiversity, for example. So these are a few of the elements that we are willing to work on. Many more, I would say, kind of it's really a very open process for us. And as I said, we are trying to find the intersection between the needs and the desires of Indonesia for its own development in a green transition, and where Europe has its strength, both in terms of policy, private sector involvement of financing institutions, even bringing research and innovation into the picture, making sure that whatever new and innovative approaches are being found in the EU and elsewhere, that we can try to make them available and transferable here to the Indonesian markets. So I think this is a little bit more detail from my side. I can of course say much more about the Green Deal and everything else in the question and answers. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed, Henriette. I'm going to go to some questions. Do we have the ambassador still with us? Are you willing to answer a couple of questions before we let you depart if you have to go on? And Pak Rizal, for the first series of questions that have come through to us. Number one, really, it's a very interesting question. It's coming actually from a student, and I'll come back to the students in a moment. Richard Halim from Malang. He said, will this be beneficial for both countries? How can the Green Deal be beneficial for the Indonesian economy and the EU economy? Shouldn't there be a win, sometimes a win-lose? A lot of these things look like wins for one, but aren't. Is this really a win-win for both? And will it really end up with Indonesia being climate neutral in the future? Great question. I like students because students ask them straight and honest. And so I'm going to start with that to Mr. Vincent, first of all, and then to Pak Rizal. Is it really going to be a win-win for both sides? And how can you make that happen? Because sometimes people are looking for advantage. And this is the right time to set that playing field. Your Excellency, would you mind to lead on?
Sure. First, distinguish very well between the Green Deal and the Green Agenda. The Green Deal is a policy for the EU, for the European continent, and as such, does not apply necessarily or in a direct way to the world outside. The Green Agenda that we hope to have with Indonesia is bilateral and is from the EU side, of course, inspired by the objectives of the Green Deal. And as what Henriette has described shows that very clearly, that these are the things that we wish to cooperate on with Indonesia are very similar to what we want to realize on the European continent as well. Now, can this be mutually beneficial? For sure it can. For a number of reasons. First of all, if you look at the global goods of the climate and so on, whatever we do in Europe, if we do it well, will be beneficial for the rest of the world, including Indonesia. Secondly, it will set a track record. It will set a model, not to be photocopied, but certainly a model that can inspire the Indonesian government, and with hosts of opportunities for know-how sharing by the EU officials, but also by officials from our 27 member states with Indonesia and on all areas that are relevant for this country. Thirdly, it's a commitment for finance. I mentioned the European Investment Bank that will be lending or can lend 2.1 trillion euros to Indonesia over the coming 7 years. Very favorable loans, and we need to sort out the sort of starting problems we had 3 years ago that Pak Rizal mentioned, but I think we have already done so. So we are ready for business. So it's now up to the ideas and the fundable programs. And lastly, I'd say it's about the growth objective for this country, 2030 SDGs and 2045 high income. We are convinced that that sort of objective can be realized in a better way and probably faster and certainly more sustainable than with a green agenda than without. So I think that we have a lot to gain. Indonesia has a lot to gain, and Indonesia's gain in this respect is our gain because of the close partnership we feel with your country.
Very, very well put, sir. Pak Rizal, just to satisfy our student population, because you know the students everywhere in the world are idealists and they're only looking for things. Can you reassure them that there won't be political objectives which override real green objectives? We know that happens quite a lot, but it seems now the agenda is pure rather than politically based. Is that where I know that in Bapanas, you don't have political objectives, only national planning objectives. So that seems to be the right institution to take this forward.
Yes, technocratic. We say about that, the agenda. So I think it's much more easier for me to explain in Bahasa Indonesia about the question, because it is Indonesian student. So I think.
Please do.
Ya, tentang pertanyaan bagaimana menguntungkan, saya mencoba menggambarkan satu hal yang sederhana saja. Ketika kita berbicara mengenai energi, kita sampai kepada tahap di mana kita menjadi pengimpor energi. Dan akan menjadi pengimpor energi terbesar di kawasan mungkin Asia dan Asia Tenggara. Ketika pada tahun 2050, 90% energi kita yang digunakan seperti saat ini adalah energi fosil. Jadi sekitar 60% penggunaan energi kita itu adalah BBM dan 30% itu batu bara. Jadi sekitar 50% BBM dan sekitar 40% batu bara, jadi sekitar 90% itu energi fosil. Ketika itu terus digunakan, kita akan kehabisan energi tersebut. Dan kita akan menjadi pengimpor energi yang cukup besar. Dengan 90% kita mengimpor penggunaan energi kita dalam negeri, kalau kita tetap menggunakan fosil seperti saat ini. Mengapa kita masuk kepada energi terbarukan? Nah, ini adalah alasan supaya kita tidak memiliki ketergantungan kepada importir, kepada energi-energi fosil yang harus kita impor, sehingga kita memiliki apa yang disebut sebagai kemandirian energi. Nah, energi terbarukan ini memerlukan teknologi, memerlukan modal, memerlukan banyak precondition untuk dikembangkan. Negara-negara Eropa, terutama European Union, itu memiliki kualitas teknologi yang bagus dan mereka juga cukup advance di dalam pengembangan energi terbarukan. Nah, ini yang kita gunakan kesempatan ini untuk melakukan kerjasama. Apalagi mereka punya pendanaan yang tentunya akan menjadi bagian dari hambatan kita di dalam mengembangkan energi terbarukan. Nah, bantuan pendanaan ini seperti halnya ketika orang-orang mulai bisnis itu memerlukan bantuan modal. Nah, bantuan pendanaan ini yang kita umpamakan sebagai bantuan modal dari European Union. Nah, saya kira dengan begitu kita bisa terbebas dari ketergantungan kita terhadap import energi nantinya, ketika kita bisa menggunakan energi kita dalam negeri, yaitu renewable energy, energi terbarukan seperti energi angin, matahari, kemudian air, dan banyak lagi energi terbarukan termasuk dari bioenergi yang berdasarkan nabati, termasuk tadi bambu yang disampaikan oleh Bu Handrit tadi. Mungkin ada juga yang menanyakan di pertanyaan di sini, pemanfaatan bambu sebagai sumber energi juga cukup menjanjikan. Jadi itu adalah suatu hal yang menguntungkan Indonesia secara ketergantungan. Jadi kita terhindar dari ketergantungan dengan bantuan kerjasama ini. Nah, salah satu aspeknya seperti itu. Tetapi aspek lainnya juga pasti akan banyak. Termasuk tadi yang saya sampaikan, pembangunan transportasi, pembangunan irigasi, dan sebagainya. Kita sudah lama menjalin kerjasama dengan negara-negara kita sebut sebagai development partner, negara-negara yang mitra pembangunan istilah kita sekarang, untuk mencoba memproses atau menjalankan pembangunan kita agar kita terbebas dari middle income trap. Jadi middle income trap itu adalah kondisi di mana kita susah tumbuh karena situasi-situasi tidak ada inovasi, tidak ada investasi, tidak ada transformasi. Nah, transformasi ekonomi ini yang kita jalankan supaya apa? Supaya nanti ada masuk inovasi-inovasi baru, termasuk green economy, termasuk manufacturing industry yang porsinya diharapkan akan meningkat lagi setelah mengalami penurunan yang cukup tajam dalam 10 tahun terakhir sejak tahun 2020. Bahkan 20 tahun terakhir ini mengalami penurunan. Nah, penurunan sektor industri ini tidak kita harapkan karena semakin kecil porsi sektor industri, semakin kita tergantung kepada sumber daya alam, semakin terperangkap kita di dalam negara dengan penghasilan menengah. Yang kita tidak akan lulus menjadi negara maju. Saya kira itu aspek-aspek baik secara tadi saya sampaikan mudah dipahaminya bagaimana itu menguntungkan kita, maupun aspek-aspek yang saya sebut sebagai tujuan-tujuan transformasi ekonomi jangka panjang. Saya kira itu. Thank you Pak Alistair. Sorry for the bahasa Indonesia that I've explained to the student. So,
tidak ada masalah, ini sebetulnya kebanyakan orang yang dengar pasti bahasa Indonesia, tapi sebab kita international, our apologies to Zoe in London, who I'm for sure doesn't actually speak Indonesian yet, but we'll get her down here speaking one of these days. Good morning to you, Zoe. It's very early in the morning for you. Apologies for getting you up on a cold winter's morning. Before we leave the students, the whole aspect of universities is very important to this. It's the next generation that's going to take this forward. In the Green Agenda, well, let's start with the Green Deal. In the Green Deal, is there an integration with universities and the way in which this is now brought back down into the education level, whether it be research or even actual how many courses are there in sustainable finance, sustainable development, sustainable in universities? I think there are in Europe. In Indonesia, not so many yet. So I think that's an area which we can certainly look at as well. Is there an aspect to the Green Agenda which is going to bring education into it, which gives us the next generation being even better than the current generation? Perhaps, Ambassador, you could look at that for us.
Well, Alistair, thank you very much for the idea. It's a good one, and I don't think that up to now we had done that, but certainly we can. It would be expanding the work that we have already been having with Indonesia in student exchange and university partnership, and year after year. So we have the tool available. To do so, and the idea is certainly very, very good. One related point on young people in general, the European experience is very much that the young people are in the driver's seat of all of this. Maybe not, in the decision-making terms, but certainly as an engine for awareness raising and for pushing the political leaders and parties, etc., to move ahead. That's been over the past, let's say, 5 to 7 years, a tremendous factor. And so there's every logic in involving a youth dimension in the Green Agenda.
Thank you. I just always think that if we start earlier with education, a lot of problems won't happen. Rather than solving them, we can actually prevent them happening by bringing them into the way in which people think earlier. Another question, several questions have come through about cooperation with the private sector. When the private sector listening in, 300 people here, 2.1 trillion euro and 18 billion in funds, they always go, yes, but what can I get out of this? Let's start with Pak Rizal, looking at the way in which Bappenas cooperates with the private sector, and maybe bring in Henriette then on the sort of partnerships have happened in her experience, whereby private sector becomes part of this quite quickly, not looking at big projects, but just one of the people here said, Bapanas cooperation with private sector. Christina Wijaya is asking about UMKM, small to medium enterprises. Can they possibly benefit? Here we are in Indonesia with the majority of employment still in the small to medium sector. Can they benefit? How do they get involved? What can they do? Is there an institution? How does that partnership extend into that area? Perhaps, Rizal, you could start off saying if there is a public-private partnership with Bapanas, or how do they get involved?
Yes, thank you, Alistair. As I also mentioned in my presentation earlier, that we have an experience on how can we engage the private sector to be able to also benefit on the cooperation between Indonesia with the development partner. And we have the some sort of a mechanism on that, but still there's still a problem on how can we channeling the money from the development partner to the private sector directly without any government intervention or government involvement. That is the situation that we still have now. But we work on that. We try to have a mechanism on how can we channeling the money on, or we facilitate the cooperation between the development partner directly to the private sector. We have a lot of initiatives, and if it is related to the export business, for instance, we have an institution to be able channeling the money through the Exim Bank, Indonesian Exim Bank, that we have the opportunity to work on that mechanism. But for the initiatives that's not really related with the export activities, then it would be still some sort of mechanism that we have to sort that things out. I think we also have the mechanism to PPP, public and private partnership, or KPBU in bahasa Indonesia, kerjasama pemerintah dan badan usaha. There is also we can working on that mechanism to be able to use the cooperation in order to make the private sector to be involved on this matter. So I think there is still a mechanism that we're working on, Pa Alistair, but for sure that we going to make that things possible, and especially the experience that we have earlier on the cooperation with European Investment Bank, that the private sector need the financial support, that European Investment Bank, on the other hand, having ability to support, but there is still harder on the mechanism in between that. There is homework, as I said earlier, that the government of Indonesia should be sort that things out. So I think it is a good issue, and we're going to finalize that thing. And especially it is not really complicated issue, if I can say, because it is under the government regulation. Then the government itself is aware about the situation. So I think it's going to be will soon be finished. And the question of the UMKM, we know that a lot of incentive, and especially our national bank have also the portfolio on the circular economy, green economy, and I think that's the facilitate that we can provide to the UMKM if they want to start a business on the circular economy. And I think we're working on that, and especially for the at the pandemic situation right now, there's a lot of incentive from government for the UMKM to start a business. As you said earlier, that UMKM micro business is the biggest biggest informal sector in Indonesia that can be become it's for the economic situation for the time being. Thank you, Pak Alistair.
Thank you very much, Pak Rizal. Henriette, mechanisms for involving either on the student side or on the small and medium enterprises. Your experience in India, did you manage to get anything going? All of the questions I'm getting through here, of course, are private sector saying, how do we get involved? What can we do? Are there subsidies for people? What's happening? Can I electrify my buildings? I mean, we will take all of these questions and make sure that they get circulated later and answered as much as we can.
Right.
But in the meantime,
yeah.
What is there?
No. Again, thank you very much for this. Let me focus a little bit on the business, private sector involvement. I mean, I think it's really for me it was kind of one of the really strong elements of this partnership idea, that we bring public sector and private sector much more together, because I mean, I think both for the European businesses, let me speak first about the European businesses. So we have, as the ambassador mentioned, already a very significant number of European businesses that are active here, many of them working on green issues already, but we have an even larger amount of small and medium-sized enterprises, businesses in Europe with a lot of good technologies that would in principle be willing or happy to come here in the market, but maybe they don't know exactly what is going on here. Maybe it seems, you know, when you're sitting in Europe, this seems all to be a little bit far away. And how do we do that? And is it really safe and possible for us? So by bringing the businesses into the policy dialogue, they get much more of an understanding of the framework in which they would have to fit into. Both, I mean, so let's say now we have an upcoming policy. Let's say Indonesia decides to install a lot of solar energy, for example. As that is becoming turned into policy, once the businesses hear about that, then they will understand, okay, there's a policy certainty here. It's something that the government has decided that they will do over X number of years. So therefore, it makes sense for us to get involved and to move if we have any capacity on this particular topic. So that's one thing. But also the other way around, to allow for the businesses to explain from both sides, I would say, both Indonesian and European businesses, to explain to the policymakers what kind of opportunities are there. Because, I mean, in any system, there's always a kind of a rigidity. I mean, we have seen it very much in Europe, that we always tend to favor the solutions that we know, that we have done for many, many years. But as new and innovative solutions come up, we need to know about them as policymakers in order to even consider them, and in order to make the right frameworks, financial support mechanisms, what it may be, for these solutions to become attractive. I mean, for example, I mean, to give an example from India on solar power, there was a big government policy to create rooftop solar programs. So they set up a kind of a financial scheme that individuals, if they would install solar power on their rooftop, would get certain financial incitements. Yeah, I don't know how to say that. So this, I think, is something that that, you know, to bring these two sides together and for both sides to really understand what is possible and what is the thinking of the other side. That's one big opportunity that I see. Then, of course, the idea is also for us to link the European and the Indonesian businesses together, because, I mean, the reality is that it's not going to be a situation where everything gets imported from Europe. Europe has a lot of good solutions, but unfortunately, they're usually also a little bit on the costly side. So for European businesses, it's very interesting often to partner with local partners, Indonesian partners, and to see, you know, how can they make their products competitive in this market. So I think there's a lot of opportunity on this. And again, there are many upcoming, like, whole value chains that we may not even know yet. I mean, batteries are going to become much more important in the future for renewable energy storage. Let's say Indonesia at some point will decide to go much more strongly into wind, be it either onshore or offshore wind. Many of these components are so big that they will never be transported from anywhere in the world. They will have to be produced locally, and there will be a big opportunity to set up partnerships, joint ventures, whatever, between EU companies that has already had this knowledge and partners here who will then build up this whole value chain. So I think, yeah, again, there's a lot we can do. We can help businesses also. I mean, European businesses, we need to help them to see, you know, what is it that how do they need to prepare themselves to work in this market? So I can see a lot of nice work streams that could happen around this particular topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't know how these partnerships are expressed publicly, but obviously that's something of great interest nowadays as transparency comes into development and cooperation. If the EU and Indonesia do come to a green agenda partnership, how public will that be? Perhaps we can start with the ambassador and then on to Pak Rizal, just to finish off this first session of questions. If you come to an agreement, who's going to know about it? All the people asking questions, whether it be from dairy farmers or nickel ore people, or, I mean, there's a whole bunch of questions, the bamboo industry. They want to know, have you got an agreement in my sector and how can I get involved? How transparent can it be under government-to-government cooperation? But Mr. Vincent, would you mind to start off?
Certainly. Well, it will be very public, for sure. There is every reason for this to be known by everybody, and because we need everybody's buy-in for it. It's as simple as that. It's part of awareness raising. It's part of pushing the policy agenda and part of pushing the business agenda for everybody, etc. So, but let's also be clear that this cooperation agenda is not a legally binding agreement. It's not like joining WTO and after joining WTO you have certain legal requirements to meet. No, this is a cooperation agenda, and with common goals. Indonesia's law remains Indonesia's law, but we hope to work together jointly towards the aspirations that we have in common if it comes to to greening and cleaning and rendering carbon neutral the economy and society.
Thank you. Pak Rizal, has Bapenas, I know that I've looked at your website, yeah. It's pretty comprehensive, it's got good access, but if you make agreements like this to cooperate, will you be featuring that there as well, that people can go on and say, what have you got in my sector, renewable energy in Sumba Island, how can we get involved? I mean, there's all sorts of people out there incredibly interested in how they can take advantage of this new cooperation.
Thank you, Paul. Firstly, that I would like to make a strong commitment that the development of renewable energy, and especially enlarge the circular economy and green economy, is nothing without any participation of the private sector. So I think that the involvement of private sector is must in this cooperation of the agenda. And I think by having that opportunity of the cooperation like the one with the European Union will be a good opportunity for us to also, involve the private sector on it. But the channeling that should be something that we have to working on, and we have to also make some sort of a portion for the private sector to be able to access the quote-unquote fund. So I think there is still some mechanism that we have to make and something that we have to build up. So I think, like the question, how can the small private sector involve on this cooperation? It can be possible if it is the portion that the government Indonesia, like we have also for the government budget, we have a DAK or a allocation for special allocation for the government budget for the small development, like develop of the solar panel to every single household in the area, and also small irrigation. That's small things that we allocate from the government budget. It is also possible that we make some sort of allocation for the cooperation, but the mechanism itself that we have to prepare. So I think the most important for us is how can we make a strong agreement with the development partner, that the government as a guarantor, as a guarantor of the project, can be also make not really strong on that. I mean, it's like a guarantor is guarantor, but still there is something that we can guarantee on that. So what I mentioned here is, please don't always asking for the government guarantee on the development of this small scale project. So I think let we trust them, let me make the development on this small scale project as the quote unquote part of development cooperation. So I think a lot of things, a lot of room that we can make on that cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Rizal. There's a whole area here which I'm not going to get into as we leave the sort of policy level, because we haven't talked about central government to regional government cooperation either, which is an absolute minefield, which I would take another 6 hours to talk about. I'm going to ask one more question to come through. It's going to go to Henriette as we finish this Q&A, because I don't understand the question. What 4.0 technology will be used to ensure the Indonesia green transition? I don't even know what 4.0 technology is yet. Artificial intelligence, IoT, is that part of the formula? I don't know.
I really don't know what a 4.0 technology is either, Alistair. So at least we share that. Yeah, maybe it's something we can cover later on in writing when we understand it.
Okay, so Sidi Asmono, great question. You got all of the panelists. I'm not going to go back to Pat Rizal. I'm sure he knows what 4.0 technology is, but we're not sure whether that works or not. Of course, it'll be using the greatest technology that we can use to implement this whole program, especially information technology, to share and make sure the transparency and implementation. That's our first.
Can I add just one comment on the whole issue of transparency and what will be public and so on? Again, just an idea, because as I mentioned in the beginning, we have a lot of good projects, green projects going on in Sumba Island, in other islands, and one idea could be to have a kind of a platform where digital platform, where all these pilot projects become somehow available, because there's a lot of opportunity for replication that I think is not often always utilized as best possible, not here specifically, but generally. So I think that's one thing that such a green partnership could facilitate and could help to see, also. Let's say I am living in one part of the country and I have a particular problem. That would give me an opportunity to see what have other people done, what type of solutions are there, and I think that could be very helpful, because of course, no matter how much we work and how much money we have available, we're never going to be able to solve all the challenges that are there, but at least we can make knowledge available. So that was just one other comment. Sorry.
It's a very good idea. We'd be more than happy to help work on that whole, with all of our partnerships on the whole media availability and the internet availability. To our first three our keynote speakers, your job is done for the moment. Please stay online with us. Your Q&A is over. I'm going to move on to the private sector now. Please stay if you can. If you can't, we'd like to thank you very much on behalf of MVB for being with us today. I think that was exactly what was needed to open the whole discussion. The people who are talking next, actually, hopefully that both EU and Bappenas will have ears on this, because the people who are talking next are people who know what their sectors need. And that's kind of important because they're both experts in their field. So I'm going to start off by going to Mohammed Bijaksana Junarosano, who I'm so glad we get to call Pat Sano or Mas Sano to many, who is a waste entrepreneur, but he's got involved in the recycling of waste, and he's created some very important institutions. The Circular Economy Forum, which has been running for a few years, is probably the best forum that we have in Indonesia for looking at the solutions to this. He's been an advisor to Bappenas on food less waste and the World Resource Initiative. He's a mentor in the Circular Innovation Jam. He's done lots of things. He's an expert, and he is, unlike the rest of us, wearing a mask to show his commitment to the sustainability of human life. Pat Sano, over to you for 15 minutes. We're going to come back to Pat John, and then we're going to go on to London and talk about how the finance world can support all of this and even stimulate it through our HSBC expert. Sano, over to you first of all. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Alistair. Hello everyone. This is my shift to be work from office. That's why I'm using this mask, because there is several my colleague here. So circular economy in Indonesia. Thank you for Mr. Alistair for this good sharing session and forum. I believe I have a quote. This is very important for us to understand and relate about the situation. Which one is faster? Is it the environmental destruction or environmental problem, or the speed of the solution? I know this is a rhetoric question, but this is very important. That's why I'm very happy to hear the word from His Excellency Ambassador said about we need to speed up. We need to speed up. We have a lot of conference, we have a lot of study, we have a lot of ideas, but most of it, we need to do it faster to act. So this is my presentation, 15 minutes. Yeah, Indonesia waste problem. Even Leonardo DiCaprio, the most handsome, famous person, talking about Bantar Gebang, the biggest landfill in Southeast Asia in Jakarta. 8,000 tons per day of waste just ends up in this landfill. And yeah, why Indonesia really need this transformation on circular economy? Because this is not sustainable. We only make and also dump the waste. It's polluting, it's destructive. We need to change. And we work from 2016. We create Indonesia Circular Economy in 2017. We closely work with the government too, and we can convince and advocate that circular economy is important, and we're quite happy to have the Indonesia Vision 2045 that currently in the National Medium-Term Development Plan, there is already a circular economy on it. So we need to embrace this and appreciate the government. And also this is launched this week by the Minister of Bappenas, the research, the impact of circular economy in Indonesia from the economic, social, and environmental. This is the real proof of collaboration between EU and Indonesia, because this is supported by Embassy of Denmark and also from the government in Bappenas, and also the proof of collaboration. This is not only one person work, this is collaboration between organizations, because this waste, this environment is a complex issue. And if we see this economic benefit, we can create 312 trillion rupiah, increasing for this if we are implementing circular economy in 5 sectors: in food, textile, construction, wholesale, and e-waste or electronic. And the environmental benefit also very huge. We can reduce 18 to 52% of waste in 2030 and reduce CO2 emission by 126 million tons. And the social benefit, we can create 4.4 million jobs by 2030 if we are running fast to implement circular economy. And this is what the government currently have in their mind, that we already do the analysis, the potential of economic, environmental, and social, and the result, yes, this is proven to be very good for our development and our society. And then the second roadmap, we want to create the action plan. So the government want to create the action plan of circular economy, and then create the platform, how we can create the pilot of project, and then create the partnership, the private sector, the academic, the media like you, Alistair, is very important. We have to strengthen the partnership. And then we want to implement it and guide it by the next RPJMN 2025-2029. So this is the government want to do. And more detail of the Indonesia target, currently we already have Jakstranas. It's a policy, a strategic, national strategic policy on waste. We have very ambitious target, reduce the waste 30%, and also handling the waste or treatment the waste 70% by 2025. It means we want to reach 100% services rate in 2025. And also the NPAP target, National Plastic Action Partnership, we want to reduce 75% of marine plastic debris by 2025. And if the government already state that this is part of the target, urgency, and the priority, the stakeholder and the ecosystem will be join forces to hand in hand, helping and collaborate together to reach this. So this is very important. And we need a lot of investment to reach this. We lack of the infrastructure, we lack of the law enforcement. That's why the EU role and many stakeholders other that we need to collaborate, it's very important. What we can learn from EU with this European Green Deal, circular economy, we see that similar thing. Yeah, we are consume similar thing. There is laptop, there is smartphone, there is our fabric system, the fashion and everything. So we can learn from it and also modify it into Indonesia context, into economy of Indonesia and into a culture of Indonesia. So we have learned a lot from this EU, and also we need the expert and the experience how you can create the policy and implementing the policy. But I want to highlight the most important thing in Indonesia is implementation. So we need to learn about the ability and also the technicality to implement a policy. So that's my highlight, implementation. Indonesia and EU already reaffirmed commitment to green growth. This is already a good news. And this one is our platform for a national platform, Circular Economy in Indonesia, the Indonesia Circular Economy Forum. This year, we will be held in Jakarta, July 2021. We will give more information about this. So this is high-level forum, decision maker from private, from academy, from NGO, from the government, sit down together talking about what is the challenge, what is the challenge, what is the hope, what is the solution, why we need to collaborate and how we can collaborate. So this is very important platform, and a lot of result. We see that the challenge in Indonesia is regulation that need to be enforced, commitment, education, and also the recommendation is leadership. This is also very important, leadership. You can see our program in the website. That this is will be the society or the public initiative about circular economy in Indonesia. We want to create this the digital information hub Indonesia.cef.id. So I hope we can collaborate in this 20 to 23rd July 2021. We work with many ministry to help this. Thank you very much.
Sano, perfect timing. We just talked about the way in which we can have an integration of information. We talked about public-private partnerships, and we already have solutions. We've already got the possibility of doing this. I know Pat John's next going to talk about his energy forum as well. What we need to happen is that everybody has to be on the same platform, though, that we're not competing. That's something which you and I started talking about some years ago, that we actually have competition in sustainability, which is rather than cooperation. So what we're trying to get together now is this ability to cooperate, and your program should be very much part of that. And I certainly encourage Henriette to come and meet with us and talk about how we bring all of these programs under one roof, so that we don't have people competing for attention, but cooperating for everyone's attention. Now, it's my great pleasure. We'll come back. Please stay with us for the Q&A, please, Pak Sano. Now we're going on to Pak John Raspati, who is a long-time activist in clean energy development and sustainability. He has helped establish the Indonesian Renewable Energy Society. He founded the Indonesian Energy Conservation and Efficiency Society, which he's talking under today, MASKAI. He is editor-in-chief of Respect magazine, media dedicated to clean energy. He has a great passion in making Indonesia a leading country in climate change mitigation and adaptations. So you can't really get somebody who is better suited to follow up this EU-Indonesian cooperation on green transition. So John, may I pass over to you to give your presentation of what you think Indonesia needs in the whole clean energy sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Alistair. It's been an honor to participate in this important forum. And I like particularly the last speaker, the young passion to make Indonesia circular economy going to be successful. Circular economy is part of the sustainable development, of course. And I'm very pleased to chat with him someday in talking how we have to collaborate each other. But I've been asked by Alistair to talk about the clean energy development in Indonesia, because as you know, clean energy is it's always been mentioned by any development program as one of the, if not most important element of development, because without energy, we cannot do anything. Or we can do that, but it's very, very slow. Let's talk about clean energy. And in my definition, clean energy is my personal definition. Is a combination between renewable energy and energy efficiency. It is, you know, some people say that the cleanest energy is the energy that we don't use, right? And that is the energy efficiency, because not many people have a notion that energy efficiency, as a matter of fact, create energy, create the cleanest energy of all, and it is cheaper energy get involved with or to utilize. While renewable energy, we know that we are developing the renewable energy for many years. But I will talk about this, and I'm not concealing anything that we have to, as results said, that Indonesia has to do a lot of homework to make a commitment, strategy, and regulation works. And I also agree to Sano at the time, but the biggest problem in Indonesia is implementing regulation, implementing the way we want it. So I'm going to talk that a little bit about that. So let me start with our energy situation. By default, Indonesia is blessed with virtually all sort of energy. You can mention any energy that Indonesia don't have. We have. Whether the volume is big enough, we don't know. But we have all sort of energy. We have non fossil or non-renewable energy, and we have all renewable energy that we have, you name it. But unfortunately, Indonesia, in the Indonesian development history and the political history too, is that we had to export or to give away, I would say not to give away, but to export our natural resources, including non-renewable energy like oil and anything, oil and coal and gas. We have exported that to fuel the national development. So since the early 70s way to end of 90, we have been exporting this excessively. In fact, because of that and because of the slow development of renewable energy that's supposed to replace the exhausting non-renewable energy, the development in Indonesia is quite slow. To name an example, we have been making a target of 23% by 2025, and we made 15% by 2010 or something like that. I forgot. But the practice is, the reality is that we are because we are perhaps in my view is we are not consistent in making the efforts. We are not all out enough to do that. So we are lagging behind the target. As a matter of fact, as a result, we have this kind of situation now. So we are currently dependent on fossil fuel, over 80%. But results say 90%. Well, I think 80% is good enough. I think the development of renewable energy and energy efficiency is something like perhaps 10% at least. Yeah. Okay. Government political will are there, so commitment on there. But if we are facing complex challenges when it comes to translating such commitment into making action. This is where I mean that implementation is the big issue here in Indonesia, especially implementation with great consistency and effectiveness. So we need effective and consistent regulation. It has much to be improved. So my organization is continuously working with the government, in this case, the Ministry of Energy and Resources and Mineral Resources, to how to improve further in terms of energy efficiency and conservation. So, and this is also the fact that the benefits of energy efficiency as the low-hanging fruit, that clear benefits of doing so are not well understood by stakeholders, officially by the local SME, small and medium enterprises, and the mainstream financial institution. That is why that EE energy efficiency project or conservation energy conservation project are not so getting enough attention. Or I would say that the bank choose to avoid this project. they do not prefer the project. They prefer renewable energy, yes, but this demand side of the equation has to also be developed at the same time. So there is also a lack of understanding that renewable energy is the big way to conserve energy and to mitigate the challenge of climate change in the process. And that therefore they must be developed fastly and consistently before the fossil energy resources run out. Indonesia has been always in the upfront when joining the international program. That's why Indonesia has been one of the important countries that joined the Paris Agreement. We ratified that and submit the national determined contribution in 2016, which contained transition to clean energy, emission reduction, eliminate fossil fuel subsidies, waste to energy, which is one part of the UNO's project, which are at the same time addressing the environmental challenges. This is what Indonesia has committed to the world. Another commitment to the world is Indonesia embraced or adopted the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals by September 2015. Indonesia, unfortunately, Pak Rizal has not mentioned that, but explicitly, but implicitly, by adopting the low carbon development model in the National Development Program starting in 2020 and 2025. This is what the commitment is. Okay, I will show you that this is some the roadmap how we in terms of energy, how we put our national determined contribution to the Paris Agreement. You see that big chunk of this plan are renewable energy and energy efficiency, clean energy power. So this is what the government is working now on. It's based on regulation number 79 is on National Energy Strategic Plan. It creates a strategy which you can read yourself and supporting policies that is derived from this strategy. And this is how the roadmap looks like. The what you call it, the clean energy development is from 2025 in 400 MTOE to 1,030 MTOE in 2050. And this is the plan regarding the maximizing renewable energy. So we have everything here. We have wind, we have hydro, we have geothermal, we have bioenergy, and we have solar and wind. Yeah, wind is here, right? And this is what the government is going to achieve by putting the energy mix by 2025, whereby 23% renewable energy or clean energy is included in the energy mix. And this is the potential of the energy, renewable energy. As I said, we have everything here with well, reasonable or big resources here. Like, for example, the geothermal, they say that we are one of the biggest resources. We have biggest resources in the world, yeah. But and we have hydropower, we have bioenergy, we have wind, we have solar, and we have sea energy or ocean energy. So these are the target, or these are the potential that Indonesia has. You see, for example, geothermal, we have 11 gigawatt resource, and we only have 17. The reserve is 17.5, but we only utilize at only almost 2,000 megawatt, almost 2 gigawatt already. So only 0.4%. So are the others that we are. This graphic indicate how small we have been progressing in developing clean energy. This is as far as the achievement during the third quarter, but you can look into that for yourself. I will share this to you. And this is the energy in terms of energy efficiency and conservation based on this energy mix and its consumption mix. Now we go to reducing energy intensity 1% every year until 2025, and about 17% of the target that we have to meet by 2025. So this is the type of the energy efficiency and conservation project. We do in energy management. We standardize the equipment. We develop the energy conservation project. We are creating awareness, and we are offering energy efficiency area for national entities. Okay, as far as the CO2 emission is concerned, these are the numbers that we are progressing reasonably in this case. So now let me talk about the challenges in doing all that. We have several challenges that I listed as 12, but I don't have to address everything. But number one is reaching common understanding and political consensus about sustainability is very hard. Not everybody, even not every government institution understand properly about the concept of sustainability. So we need to do something about that. And to engage stakeholders in implementation of low carbon development, ensuring the model that will confirm the future government is also the challenge. Another challenge is improving the laws and mandating the development of clean energy for sustainable and creating strong and consistent regulation. This has been mentioned by Sanu as well, I think, that creating effective and consistent regulation is much of a homework here. And then establishing priority programs that meet committed policy. There's also another program. We need the priority programs, and we have to do it all out. The president has said this morning that we have to go all out. We have to be extraordinary measure to meet the challenge of climate change. That means that we have to do sustainable development, circular economy, etc., etc. To establish effective coordination. This is another demon, I would say. This is another challenge. Everybody knows that the complexity of the Indonesian bureaucracy, Indonesian government. So coordination is a very, very key problem here. So we need to improve the coordination. We have coordinating minister, but in the field of we cannot ensure that coordination minister can solve everything. So consistent and efficient law enforcement. Okay, law enforcement is also another problem, that we have a strategy, we have regulation, but we are very old, not too strong in assuring law enforcement to achieve the goal. Like, okay, determining standard, okay, so some of the problem is like here, you can see that. So the opportunities, there are also a lot of opportunities in Indonesia. Number one is all types of energy resources we have, yeah? And then low carbon development has been implemented now, yeah? Or being implemented. Continuous and well-coordinated clean energy development is in the making. Fundings available from global sources mandated by Paris Agreement are available in the world, but I don't know how far we can take advantage on that. And strong efforts made by financial sector, increasing access, a success story in the global context, will encourage more national financial sector. Growing awareness, stronger commitments on current government on research and development. This is already in the making, so we hope this is the opportunities. So you have to read the opportunities with this, what I call the way forward. So I don't have to I don't have to put it this to discuss this in detail, but we plotted in our observation. We think that the government should do this in the future. That's one is improve the policy and regulation, create effective funding mechanism, and conduct capacity building program. That's one of the move forward.
But John, can I suggest that we bring that slide back during Q&A when we're talking about how we interact with the EU? Because I think that will
yes, this is my last slide, Alistair. So how can international collaboration like with Indonesia and the EU can help Indonesia achieve or accomplish that goal? Number one is sharing the best practices and the success stories in clean energy development. We need to hear from Europe how to do that, because Europe is much more experienced in doing this. We need to share knowledge, expertise, and research and development experiences. Indonesia is a very new, it has been neglecting this research and development experience in the past 50 years. Yeah. Now Indonesia is putting more energy, putting more attention to research and development by creating PRIN, for example, creating a special agency to focus on research and development under the research minister. We collaborate in the decarbonization of the industry. This is what we expect to collaborate with the European in decarbonizing industry, building, and the mobility sector. We need to establish effective bilateral and multilateral cooperation to forming affordable finance resources for clean energy development. Now, we might hear from EHPC later in this afternoon, and we already have heard from the ambassador the prospect of trillions of euros and we can take advantage of that. We can make use of that based on the partnership. Collaborating the establishment of fair and win-win international trade. I'm not going to open the current wound. Yeah, Europe and Indonesia has been in a kind of tension in addressing the CPO, the CPO export to Europe. I think that the Europeans have to understand that we need that export to fuel our economy. So please, in terms of the collaboration, we have to find a solution to win-win international trade between Indonesia and Europe. And last but not least, it's boosting the foreign direct investment or joint venture in Indonesia in clean energy development. I remember a movie the other day that somebody say, "Show me the money." Yeah, but now the money owner is saying, "Show me the project." So this is the homework that Indonesia has to develop as many as possible projects in clean energy development in order to have an advantage to the available trillions of euro or trillions of dollar available in the next 10 to 20 years. Thank you very much.
John, thank you very much indeed. That was, you obviously know your subject extremely well. That's given a bit of a shopping list to the EU delegation, which is what we wanted, the areas of cooperation in energy. And I know that Sana will give a bit of a shopping list on his side as well. But before we finish this private sector look at the green transition, we go to an area which I know very little about. But John, can you release your shared screen, please?
Oh, can I share my share? Can I reshare? Okay.
Yeah. If you can unshare. I'm going to it's a great pleasure to introduce Zoe Knight, who is a Managing Director and Group Head of HSBC Centre of Sustainable Finance. She's been advising global institutional investors on equity financing for 20 years. And authored a book, which I've got to read now. It's an investor briefings called Keeping It Cool, which I think is a very cool title. She set up the Centre of Sustainable Finance in 2018, which provides thought leadership about transforming the real economy. She joined HSBC back in 2010 and has co-authored reports on low carbon opportunities in the bond and equity markets. She's a commissioner on the Energy Transition Commission and a member of the WEF Global Future Council on Global Public Goods in the Fourth Industrial Revolution. I mean, a whole list of extremely, shall we say, skillful and experienced subjects in the whole energy and sustainability field, Zoe. And my last introduction is that you were recognized as one of the female energy influencer, global female energy influencers by the Women's Energy Council. So not only finance, but a direct linking into energy. I know very little about this field, so I can't say anything apart from let's listen to how Zoe links the financial world and the world of green transition and the sustainability. So over to you, Zoe, in London.
Thank you so much, Alistair. And I've been listening to all of the other discussions that have been going on this morning, which have been particularly interesting. And somebody gave you a very long biography for me, which was very nice. I have been working for 20 years in this space. It seems like yesterday when I was starting out as a graduate working on equity strategy, but we've moved on a lot since then. And I'm delighted to be joining you today to share some perspectives around what the finance community is doing to try and support clean economy outcomes. So I've got a few slides that I'm going to share, but first off, I'll tell you a tiny bit about the think tank that HSBC set up that I'm in charge of 3 years ago. And this really came from a rationale that finance needed to get a little bit more familiar with how it should be responding to help the climate change problem. And it needs to think about two things. One, what does that real economy transformation look like to reduce greenhouse gases, particularly, of course, across the energy sector, but increasingly working on industrial sectors like steel, cement, how the transport industry might change. And we needed to look more closely at what companies are doing to deliver those emission reduction outcomes and how we can start financing them better. And we also needed to work out how the financial system should respond to the climate challenge, whether that's by launching new products that provide greater transparency around how capital is being allocated, both by investors and the asset owner and asset manager part of the financial system, but also through banks as capital originators and lenders to provide financing solutions. So those two big categories are what we wanted to do a little bit more thinking about in order to sort of activate our different business lines to be able to better talk to their clients about the solutions that we can provide. So I'll come back to that in the last slide when I talk a little bit about what HSBC is doing. But really, to give just a bit of a summary of how we as HSBC, but more importantly, the financial system as a whole is tackling with this challenge. We know that the next decade is crucial to limit rising emissions and keep temperatures under control. And what we've seen in the past year is that the COVID-19 pandemic has really accelerated the way financial institutions are thinking about this transformation. We've had a long emphasis around green as a topic, green bonds, green loans, green activities. But increasingly, COVID has prompted us to look at the more social and sustainability
factors that can be included in financing. We've heard earlier on today that the EU's got an ambitious growth strategy in the Green Deal, and it's looking to transform that into making itself a competitive, modern, resource-efficient economy with no net emissions. And this net emissions, a net zero outcome, is an important part about how investors are thinking about allocating their capital. Financial services sector, we know, is really important to enable the transition because it does provide that backdrop to investment in the shift. But as His Excellency pointed out earlier, none of this is going to work unless it's a just transition. So unless people feel that they're supported in terms of jobs, communities, and investment, and the social aspect of transitioning away from a high carbon activity to a low carbon one, it's going to be really difficult to deliver the outcomes that we're looking for. In terms of the financial sector as a whole, clearly there are different categories, and I alluded to this a couple of minutes ago. One is the role of asset owners as stewards of country wealth and prosperity going forward, and how they support the population into retirement and future longevity of lifetimes, and how they provide pensions to their population and so on. At the top of the chain, they can really influence how money is or how capital is allocated by mandating asset managers to incorporate an environmental, social, and governance way of thinking into the funds that they manage. And we've seen that as being a particularly strong growth area, initiated about 10 years ago. But in the last 2 to 3 years, we've seen a strong influx of how people are managing capital under this ESG environment. From the financing side, we're a little bit more immature in the way that we're thinking about these issues. And we've tended to focus on green in terms of use of proceeds as being the way to originate lending and bonds. Now, what's been particularly useful from the EU is the taxonomy which they've built, which is really a classification system for whether or not an economic activity is sustainable and whether or not it is aligned with the Green Deal. And for investors, this provides a starting toolkit to help make the decisions that are needed for them to say, yes, I'm going to invest in this steel company, and this steel company has a pathway that allows me to think about being aligned with emission reduction and meeting temperature goals. So that's been a real key area for us to work out which of the companies that have a climate plan, firstly, is there a climate plan in place? But secondly, how does that climate plan fit with the EU goal of becoming climate neutral by 2050? And how does that fit into the global climate picture? Now, the EU has also worked on other activities like the greening the financial system as a whole in terms of maintaining financial stability. And I will touch a little bit more on that in a second. In terms of HSBC specifically and what we're aiming to do, we set out an ambition last October that is a very, very lofty ambition. It's about helping to enable a net zero economy by 2050. And in particular, to do that, we will align our financed emissions. So of all of the loans and bonds, etc., that we issue, making sure that that capital is aligned to a net zero outcome. We'll do that by 2050. We're also looking at our own operations, and we've got much more nearer term targets with that to get to net zero by 2030. Clearly, we want to do this in a way that is supporting change and supporting how our customers might be thinking. And so we've put aside around the problem. At HSBC a little bit more closely now, I talked about this lofty ambition of net zero. We have got 3 pillars to support that. One, becoming the net zero bank in its entirety. We are stewards for about 2.4 trillion of assets across our different activities. We work across 3 main business lines. One is the global banking and markets business, which serves large corporates. 2 is the commercial banking element, which is looking more at the large but unlisted corporates, and then smaller and middle-sized enterprises and business banking. And then thirdly, our retail bank and wealth management group that covers consumer bank accounts and the asset management business. So aligning financed emissions across all of those activities, of course, is a really tricky challenge. We're starting with our balance sheet in the wholesale loan book. So looking at what large corporates are doing to address climate. Now, for many of them, they already have a climate strategy of sort of operational sustainability, so minimizing their own emissions. Increasingly, they're thinking about their own supply chains, which is something that we're also looking at. But the difficult part of this challenge is how customers manage their end product emissions. So, for example, in the oil and gas industry, just to pick up on one which is clearly fossil fuel related, some companies are setting out targets for the oil that consumers are using and driving their cars, whereas others are focusing on their own operations and what they can control in extraction and refining and so on. So the way that we are trying to approach this is to look at the high climate impact sectors, which are very transparent. We know that power is providing electricity. It can be a high climate impact sector. That shift to renewables is the obvious solution that John was talking about. And I very much liked his comment about we've moved from show me the money to show me the project, because I'm absolutely seeing that in the conversations that we have. It's about finding projects and de-risking them rather than not having the availability of capital at hand. The financial system is working in coalitions to try and build a better toolkit to provide a better assessment of emissions scenarios in particular. And here I featured this by talking about the Paris Agreement Capital Transition Assessment Tool. Now, it's a really long-winded name, but essentially what this is saying is for the power sector in particular, at a global level, we know that we need to reduce emissions by to get to net zero by 2050. Over the next 10 years, that means a 45% reduction in the emissions in entirety. How do we carve up the emissions in those sectors, taking different starting points and different economic backdrops into account? So, for example, in France, you know, we already have a very low carbon economy because of nuclear. Similarly, in Norway, we've got a lot of hydro, but clearly in other regions where the resource capacity is different, we might have more coal than we would really like, and we might need to see that shift through to renewables. So that tool helps us to sort of figure that out. In terms of supporting the customers piece, and this is a really important one, it's about providing specialist knowledge to how we can help devise the financial product, and importantly, accurately price the risk associated with that financial product to deliver the solutions for what our customers need. So we've created an ESG solutions unit to support customers on that journey. A lot of this is still in its infancy because we're working through the categorization of a sustainability linked loan, for example. We're still working on what sort of KPIs can you use to truly assess the progress, for example, in a cement company or a steel company to get to those goals. But the important point is the industry as a whole is moving in the same direction, but each individual bank or asset manager is looking at it in a way that suits their geographical footprint and their sector exposure. So what we're trying to do here is really understand what it is our customers want to do and how we can help them to get there. So we're starting to work out how we apply a climate lens to financing decisions across different economies. Clearly, this time frame is from now until 2050 is quite a long range vision, and our regulators and shareholders are pushing us to come up with shorter term targets for finance emissions, and that will be the next thing that we're thinking about. But we're trying to really work out what a sensible way of doing this looks like. I'm conscious that I've probably got about 2 minutes left before questions, and I'm sure we'll get back to questions.
Correct. Thank you.
The last pillar is about this innovation part, new climate solutions. You know, when I started looking at climate in particular, 15 years ago now, the answer was very clear. It was move to renewable energy, become much more energy efficient, price carbon, job done. That hasn't worked in the slightest because of a whole variety of barriers, which I'm sure many on the call are aware of. And new things have come along the way, a greater emphasis on thinking about nature and nature-based solutions as a toolkit to address residual emissions. Because this is a really important point. If you're an industrial company, it is going to be very unlikely that you can get to an absolute level of emission reduction to zero. You're going to need to invest in some of the carbon sink potential, whether that's CCS, man-made systems, or whether it's nature-based solutions, to help balance that net zero picture. To do that, we're working with Pollination Climate Asset Management, which the idea is to create a fund for nature, so mangroves, land use, agriculture, looking at all of these more natural systems that can help us get to our climate ambition. We've also got a clean tech program which is running, we've started to run, and importantly, our philanthropic efforts are to run a 100 million program to scale climate innovation ventures. And that's really important. The fast infra point is to establish sustainable infrastructure principles and investment vehicles. Now, honing on in Indonesia in particular in terms of what we can do here, we've been working with the Republic of Indonesia over the last 3 years to structure green sukuk financial product. We offer green loans, green trade loans, sustainability linked products, and green bonds. So we've got the whole range of thinking that we can put to work in the country to help enable the NDC activation and also all of the work that private companies want to do. I just want to pick up on that point of ambition and nationally determined contributions. This provides a really strong signal to investors on what we can start to work on to enable that shift that is aimed for with the NDC. I've just put up a slide here. I know it's very busy, but the point of it is to say green bonds, social bonds, sustainability bonds, green ESG linked loans. They're all part of the financial toolkit that companies can use to be transparent about their sustainability ambition and their sustainability aims. So now we're getting to this financial suite of products that is no longer a one size fit all. It's not only green. Any company or any person that's looking for a loan can think, okay, am I a pure play green activity such as renewables? In that case, I can think about green lending, green bonds. In sustainability linked, it might be an energy efficiency reduction metric. It might be a social education linked sustainability metric, and we can put that in. And so just on a last note, the last thing to say is in 2020, the green and sustainable bond market reached 445 billion. It's still only 5% of the overall fixed income market. So there's plenty of scope to be more transparent on how we finance change. Of that, and we've just done a study on this, looking at the sovereign market, sovereign issuance in 2020 was 96 billion. The key reason that sovereigns are starting to do issuance is to catalyse future growth in the local market and to demonstrate alignment with the NDC. So we're likely to see a little bit more sovereign issuance coming through in 2021 as countries are raising ambition on NDCs, and COP26 is the finance COP. So I hope that's given you all a flavour of how finance helps with the problem, what HSBC is doing specifically, and perhaps what we can roll out in Indonesia. I'm really looking forward to the discussion for the next 20 minutes or so. Thank you, Alistair.
Thank you very much indeed, Zoe. And you have now cemented my understanding that I know very little about the green finance world. But I want to know more.
That wasn't the plan.
I'm going to start off with the simplest question of all. Are companies and organizations who are truly fixed on sustainable goals going to get better terms in their finance or not?
Yeah, that's the nub of the problem. So yes and no is the honest answer. That yes, where the market has reached some form of scale. So for instance, in the green bond space, there often are more favorable terms because the investor base is that much bigger now, and there's a desire to get a greater allocation and a greater exposure to that green mandate. In green loans, for example, it's still much more immature, and the pricing very much depends on how risk analysts are thinking about pricing the credit. And that's an important point because there's a lot of capacity building to do on understanding true solutions and how much they will de-risk our counterparties in the advent of climate policy or introduction of carbon pricing. So that risk assessment probably isn't quite where it needs to be to get the pricing quite right to make it cheaper for lending. That said, this is across HSBC as a whole, it's a global thinking of trying to how we shift on this. So it should move fairly quickly. And of course, with others joining in, that should work. On the sustainability linked piece, it's true, it's a little bit more work, which can make it a little bit more pricey. But again, I think this will move fairly quickly. And what I would say about Indonesia is, I know there's been a lot of collaboration and thinking about maintaining financial stability, what sort of incentives should be put in place to help the financial sector scale up this transparency around green financing. So I would expect it to come quite quickly. Good.
I know that John, in the energy sector and Sano in the waste and circular economy sector are looking with great desire at trying to find easy ways to make their projects work. It's very nice to see big names. The matrix you just put out, the boxes you just put out are all big names. Most of the people listening in here are small names. They're small to medium enterprises, and that's where Indonesia's economy and employment comes in. That's much more difficult for them. I mean, let's be honest, it's much more difficult. I mean, we have got Kahati, who does their stock exchange index on sustainability, again, for big companies with big resources and 100-page sustainability reports and so on and so forth. But the mom and pop operations of Indonesia can't do that. Is HSBC going to be able to get down to a level which makes sense to a small company? If I may ask, I know that you're sitting in London and we're looking at a different perspective here, but.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad that you've raised this point, Alistair, because it's one thing that I've forgotten to say, which is in the commercial banking and retail banking businesses at HSBC, we're spending a lot of time trying to leverage that scale downwards so that it's the starting point might be for some businesses, actually, what do I do in terms of sustainability? Like what I want to be better at this. How do I start? So actually, as part of the ambition, the aim is to roll a toolkit out across our commercial banking, direct lending, business-to-business banking businesses to help with that in particular, because actually big companies can get a lot of the way there in taking up some of the slack on sort of what to do, but actually solving the problem means supporting the economy in a way that works for the economy. And if the economy is predominantly powered by the local community and jobs in that region, then it won't make sense to only be focusing on what large companies are doing. So from an HSBC perspective, we've got very strong networks across ASEAN and in Indonesia in particular, trying to figure out how do we make this more applicable, like practically applicable, to get better terms to our to people on the ground. I mean, for instance, in other regions, like across our Mexico business, we started to provide incentives to consumers around electric vehicle take up and leasing. So our lending criteria shifted in response to partly what the government was doing there. They've got a Climate Change Act, which is in law, and partly what our own business wanted to do around the credit opportunities in that market. So I think that's a long way of saying, yes, we are doing more. That's
a great segue into Pat John's sector. Pat John, electric vehicles at the moment are still more expensive to buy. If there's more financing available, would you recommend that being a priority to try and move vehicle purchases and even government vehicle purchases onto the electric vehicles? Is that one of your priorities?
That's not easy to answer question, Alistair. So, of course, the government and the society wants to want to transition from conventional cars to vehicle to electric vehicle. And one of the biggest challenges is the price. I think this is the government that has to create a strategy that people can buy electrical vehicle that affordable. We have to define the classes, and we have to put also priority in which type of electric vehicle. In my personal opinion, is public transportation has to become one of the priority, and the second is the motorcycle, which is annoying. It's start to be annoying, because they are crowding the street and causes traffic jams. So I think that's my answer. The government has to create a financial strategy or marketing strategy, what you can call it, in order to make the customers to be able to acquire or to buy an electric vehicle. And I think if, in my personal opinion, is motorcycle is the best chance to start with.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think we have a major and quite difficult problem to solve. I don't think, Zoe, you can possibly imagine. Have you been to Jakarta?
It grows. I say it grows 10 times as other vehicles per year. Yeah.
No, I have to be honest. I've been unfortunate in not being able to get to Jakarta as yet, but I've heard that it's difficult. And I've traveled in Asia extensively, but yeah, it is difficult.
It's a motorcycle population which is hard to believe, and it's hardly the most efficient, but it is the easiest, and that's taking candies from the baby will be very difficult for people who have got these 25 million motorcycles in Jakarta. Or, I mean, literally, it is that amount. Sano, are you still with us? Nope, He says he's there. Look, we're supposed to wrap up at 4:30. We have looked at our policy today. I think what I'll try and do now is just ask each of you to say, look, we've got the basis of this discussion today is Europe and Indonesia, the expertise and the commitment of Europe to working with Indonesia to solve and future problems, present problems, and create future solutions. But John, if you were to just give us your two most important factors in that relationship, what would they be? What would you want to come out of this EU-Indonesia partnership?
Are you asking to me?
Yes,
Okay.
I am. Yes.
Okay, you are one is the I think one is how the European Union can help in creating financial resources, financial solution, I would say, in order to entice or to attract customers or investor, I mean, into clean energy development. That's one thing. Second thing is perhaps in sharing the best practices that European has a lot of experience in developing clean energy development, clean energy, and perhaps we can share their experience in that.
I think that is such a sensible thing. One of the things that I've noticed in my 40 years in Indonesia is we do like starting from zero rather than looking at things which already work and copying them and adapting them, because that saves an awful lot of time and money. So that's an incredibly practical desire you have, John. Sano, two things from you, please, to wrap this up. John is looking for solutions. Across Europe, there are waste solutions, there are circular economy solutions. Are there things that you would just like to grab and bring here and say, let's do it that way? It seems to be so many good things already happening. Can you give us your two top of your priorities? Oh, just lost him again. Nope.
Hello? Hello?
Yes. Okay. Yes, Salud.
Yeah, for me, the best solution is, of course, local wisdom, local solution, because that's also will in creating less energy and also less carbon. So yes, we need to learn from the study from the Europe, the technology and everything. But if we can create the technology here, we can learn creating all the technology, all the machine here. It also will create jobs. So I believe, I trust that waste problem, including this climate issue or even circular economy, it's not about technological issue. It's about governance. So number one, what we need to do to make sure that the regulation and policy will be enforced. Number two is clear partnership, who doing what, and third, it's about financing arrangement. Of course, to change something, we need resources, we need human power, we need infrastructure. That's why we need finance arrangement. So these three, this governance need to be established by the government and also the stakeholder to create a better ecosystem, including in waste. I said enough is enough. We cannot tolerate anymore people put the waste to the river. We cannot tolerate anymore people just burn their waste. We need to strengthen the policy because it will create the demand. It will create the urgency and needs for a better mechanism. And people will think, will be more creatively if we enforce it. Like why we are using helm, it's not because we love our head, because we don't want to be penalty by the police. That is very natural human behavior. Yeah. So I believe this is something need to be done in Indonesia. We need implementation. We need law enforcement, and the ecosystem will be blossoming. That's my thought, Alistair.
Thank you very much, Sano. As always, you combine great wisdom with great humor, which is great. Finally, Zoe, thanks for coming from London. We love the cooperation of a major financial institution, the commitment to actually echo the net zero by 2050. I keep on looking at this 2050 as a long way away, and I think everyone's given themselves quite a lot of time. I know it's not, but if you were to look for one solution that you'd like to happen quickly, what would that be, Zoe? What would you, the thing that I'd like to see it happen now, and we can help to make it happen?
Issuing green finance or sustainability linked finance to implement the NDC.
Perfect.
And right. Shout out to my colleague Nuni, who's on the call with us and works very closely with MVB Indonesia, and great job at driving that forward in our Indonesia team.
Absolutely, thank you to you, Nuni, as well. I know you're listening. Unfortunately, we are out of time. We still have several hundred people listening at the moment. So to all of you, there is a deal coming. It's a partnership deal between Europe and Indonesia. It's going to be between the European Union on different sectors. We don't know what they all are yet. We've looked at 2, 3 today, finance, energy, and the circular economy. We've got so many others that we can look across where expertise is on both sides, and cooperation will be from both sides, but with hopefully with financial assistance from the EU, if we can get all the bodies and processes correctly in place. We've heard of a commitment today from Bappenas. We've heard of a commitment today from EU. We've heard of a wish list from John Raspati on energy. We've heard a wish list from Sano on waste and the circular economy. We've heard some good pledges from HSBC as to the way they want to approach it. It's now up to us to try and make this happen. I'm going to be pursuing a good conversation between Bappenas and HSBC. At the same time, we're going to have conversations between Mascay and Waste for Change and HSBC to try and bring everyone into one line and see if we can make the private sector, the students, the academics, still all work together to make something happen, rather than having competition in sustainability. But my thanks go to the ambassador, Vincent Piquet, who did a great job of representing his whole European Union. Henriette, who is the sustainability lady on the ground, who's going to be looking at those partnerships, to John Raspati from Mascay, from Sano, from Waste for Change and the Circular Economy Forum, and to Zoe in cold London. Goodbye from us here in tropical Indonesia, where we are now committed to a whole new 2021 with hope and partnership. Thank you all. On behalf of MVB, we're advocates for change. We want to help make it happen. Please speak to my team if you want to be a member of MVB. Thank you very much indeed for being with us. And until the next time, thanks so much.
Thank you, Alistair. Thank you all.
Thank
Bye.
You.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.